Whether you have been in church for a long time, nearly all of your life, nearly every Sunday of your life, or whether this is your first time in church or somewhere in between, I'll bet you've heard of a guy named the Apostle Paul. Is it so? Okay, this is yes. Question is, have you heard of a guy named Barney? Not Barney 5. Sorry. Not Barney the dinosaur, if you remember him. But Barnabas in the book of Acts, the scripture that was read for us just a bit ago. You see, if you've heard of Paul, Barnabas, is quite essential. It's safe to say that without Barnabas, there still would have been Paul, but not the Paul that we know. Not the Apostle Paul. Not the most prolific author in any part of the Bible. The one who wrote more of the Bible than anyone else. Not the one who is credited with the growth of the church. See, we say, of course, Christian church named for Christ, but don't forget, Christ had a devoted following of about 12 men, and then, of course, we know women and others. Not just 12, obviously, but a small number. Christ traveled in a relatively small area of the world. It was Paul, and then others after Paul, who extended the church's reach. If it were not for Paul, we might not be here today. If it were not for Barnabas, there might not have been Paul. You see, when Paul was Saul, you remember this, right? When Paul was Saul, with an S, not a P, he persecuted the church. Quite so. Put people in prison. Had people put to death who were early believers, early followers. And so, as you can well imagine, even though Paul had this dramatic experience on the road to Damascus, where he was encountered by Christ, as you can well imagine, those in the church were a bit hesitant to trust Paul. And so Barnabas came along. Barnabas, a highly respected member of the church, interceded, as you heard today in Scripture. It says that Barnabas took Paul. In other words, he cared for him. He became Paul's mentor. And Barnabas is the one who went on behalf of Paul to the church leaders and spoke a good word. This Paul guy, he's sincere. His words are sincere. His conversion was sincere. And you should have heard him preach down in Damascus. After some time, Paul started to get burnt out. And so he went away to his hometown of Tarsus, and after some time, Barnabas went after him. Paul, you can do this. I know the road has been tough. The people are slow to convert. They're not real sure about this whole trusting you thing, but you can do this. I know you can. And so Barnabas, we're told in Scripture, stayed with Paul for over a year and taught Paul how to set up a church. If it were not for Paul, we might not be here today. If it were not for Barnabas, there might not have been an Apostle Paul. Now, let me ask you a question, and I do need a response to this question. If you know someone named Barnabas, raise your hand. If you know someone named Paul, raise your hand. There are a lot more Pauls than there are Barnabas. Barnabas, aren't there? Maybe that's because most of us want our children to be the star of the show, right? But Paul, the one who gets all the credit. But Barnabas is the star. Barnabas, which means, by the way, son of encouragement, was the one who gave Paul his credibility. He's the one who encouraged Paul when Paul was about to hang it up. What comes to mind for you when you think of Barnabas in your own life? Who comes to mind when you think of Barnabas for yourself? Someone who's come along beside you, someone who has given you credibility or gave you credibility at a key moment in life. Someone who mentored you, who encouraged you when you were down, someone who lifted you up. Who comes to mind? I'll bet there are those folks. I had a professor in college who comes to my mind. Very bright, very well published, very interesting. I asked Dr. Nunman to supervise me on my senior project. And because Dr. Nunman was in such demand, he already had a full slate of projects, full slate of theses to supervise. And so his colleagues told him not to add me. But in typical fashion, Art Nunman replied, "Well, Wilson's pretty skinny, so he won't take up much room." I think I did that. Dr. Nunman and I met in his office once a week. We started by talking about my research, my senior thesis. We talked about his publications. And then, as those conversations usually happen, we ended up talking about life. When Janice is my wife, she was not my wife when we met. When Janice and I first met, I talked to Dr. Nunman about her. How about you? Who's Barnabas for you? A teacher, a coach, a mentor, a pastor, Sunday school teacher perhaps, a friend, a colleague, a spouse? Who is your Barnabas? While you're thinking of that, I want to ask you another question. Today's All Saints Sunday. To whom can you be Barnabas? Who is it in your life that you could offer words of encouragement, that you could walk alongside of, that you could help along the way? Don't just hear the preacher's question and let it float out of your mind. Think about who it is that you could be Barnabas, to whom you could be Barnabas. You see, if we don't have Barnabases today, we might not have Pauls tomorrow. The odds certainly decrease. If you or I are not a Barnabas to someone today, if we are not a son or a daughter of encouragement to someone else today, we might not have an Apostle Paul. We might not have a star of the show, one who goes out, who does much else. Today, like we say, is All Saints Sunday. This, in the early church, was a critical celebration. Because you see, the early church knew that if they did not celebrate the saints of yesterday, they would not encourage and lift up the saints of today. And if they did not lift up and encourage the saints of today, there might not be a church for tomorrow. Remember, in the early church, things were very penitent, very potentially doubtful. There was lots of persecution from the outside. There was lots of doubt from the inside. There were people who were skeptical that the church still had any direction in what it was supposed to do. Now, I know this is all ancient history, right? Because now we're not at all doubtful about the church or its direction. They call that sarcasm. Yeah? It's important that we remember the story about Barnabas today. It's an important and great time for us to remember those who are saints of yesterday and saints among us today, because it's important to remind us that we can be those sons and daughters of encouragement to others. We can be those saints for the church. Now let me say just one more thing about Barnabas. I'm sure that you now have in mind who it is to whom you can be Barnabas. So just one more thing. I feel certain that Barnabas enjoyed life. I feel certain that Barnabas enjoyed his time of mentoring Paul, of walking alongside this young and promising preacher. I feel certain that Barnabas then later enjoyed, you may not know this, later enjoyed being an encourager to a guy named Mark. Does that one ring a bell? As in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? So, do me a favor. Now that you have in mind who it is that you're going to serve as Barnabas, now that you are certain that you can go forth from this place today and be a son or a daughter of encouragement, think of those most fulfilling experiences in your life. Were they times when you received an accolade, an award? Or were they times that you were able to encourage someone, to mentor someone? Were the times you felt most fulfilled, those times that you devoted part of your life to someone else? Now, in case you are not convinced, just one more little interaction. Who just won the World Series? I think you can get that one. Who won the last 3 World Series before this year? Heisman Trophy is the highest award we give in college football. Who are the last 3 Heisman Trophy winners? Miss America pageant. Anybody a fan? Can you name the last 3? About the Nobel Prize. I mean, the Nobel Prize is a big deal, is it not? It is. Who won the last 3 Nobel Prizes in any of the categories? Literature, chemistry, any of them. Now, new question, and last question. Who are 3 people who greatly impacted your life? You can be Barnabas to someone else, the same way that others have been Barnabas